Welcome to another edition of Cory Means Business podcast and YouTube show. Thanks for joining me once again. I really appreciate that. Been getting a lot of feedback coming back on the podcast. A lot of people are giving me some really positive news about how the podcast is helping them get through their day and stay focused and get some positivity back. So I'm really, really happy about that. I'm glad that it's making an impact because that's obviously the point of it. So the more people we can help and the more we can share this around, the better off all of us are going to be. So that was really exciting for me to hear. And brought me a lot of self-satisfaction. Today, we are going to focus on the topic of the moment, which is still obviously COVID-19, the coronavirus. We're still under lockdown. The vast majority of the country is under lockdown. We're starting to open up, though. Kemp, the governor of Georgia, announced on Monday that he was going to open up businesses, starting with salons, gyms, movie theaters, bowling alleys, and so forth, things like that, more retail-friendly businesses, and just under strict guidelines to be extra sanitary and obviously take a bunch of guidelines with regards to disinfecting their workstations and masks and gloves and changing different things for each customer that comes in, especially the salons, because you'll be touching a lot of the same things. Obviously, with bowling alleys and movie theaters and gyms and stuff like that, probably just be like a bunch of wipes and a bunch of hand sanitizer all around and so forth. And the staff will probably be taking extra precautions. But so that's a good sign. I was actually surprised concerning some of the kickback he got for opening up the economy. As a lot of us have seen over the last week or so, there's been a ton of protests coming down from people that are very frustrated about the fact that this has gone on a lot longer than we were originally told it was going to go on. Remember, we were told back in March 15th, I think it was, or 13th, that we were going to go into a beat the curve or slow the curve semi-lockdown situation of the economy for 2 weeks. It was supposed to go from March 15th to March 30th. We were supposed to slow the curve and not overwhelm our hospitals because so many people were going to get sick and need medical attention. And it was all about the hospitals and PPE and ventilators and all that, preserving ventilators and everything because it was going to be that bad. So we agreed as a country, obviously, to give it 2 weeks to see if we couldn't, help protect some of our most vulnerable citizens and see where this thing would go. But then the 2 weeks went by and kind of, fell flat. Well, geez, this really isn't this big run on hospitals. And then we started hearing some of this stuff out of New York, and they were claiming that their hospitals were being overrun and so forth. But, any kind of investigation into that, their hospitals are already overrun. Their medical system is such a sham in New York. They've gutted that whole medical system they have since 9/11. There's been more than 20 hospitals closed down since 9/11. Now, the city's just grown. Been a lot more money created since 9/11, so I'm at a loss as to why 20 hospitals were closed down in the last 18, 19 years. Makes no sense. Greater population, aging population. Obviously, people's personal health has declined over the last 20 years, not increased. There's been more bad food, more cardiac disease, more diabetes, more of all of the things that make people more susceptible to infectious disease. And to some of these other situations. We know now, obviously, that COVID has a much higher mortality rate in people that have serious underlying diseases, most of which being diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. So we know that now, and age, obviously, but we knew that then because all infectious diseases, regardless, the flu, any upper respiratory virus of any kind, SARS, it doesn't matter which one, any of the upper respiratory viruses, and there's many, of course, that cause greater damage and they cause greater mortality rates in people that have underlying health conditions. I mean, it goes without saying. So the fact that we had to wait to realize that is a little perplexing. So as things started to unfold, the 2 weeks went by, obviously, and we obeyed as good citizens, and we gave our fellow citizens a better chance. And again, we were told to protect and not overwhelm the medical system. But after that 2 weeks, we started to see that there was no overrun of the medical system. New York was claiming there was, but it just didn't add up. Help was going there. People were starting to film hospitals in Queens that it literally had nobody going to it. So that whole thing started to look like it was more conflation than anything else. So that started to be questioned, and the rest of us around the country, we knew that our hospitals were not being overrun. Matter of fact, if you have anybody that works in the medical field or know of anybody, and I do, they were all saying that clearly nobody was showing up. And this went on way past March 30th, and we were told it had to be another 30 days. And I think it's really when people started to question what's really going on here, because what we were told wasn't happening. There was no crashing of the medical system. There was no overwhelming of anything. There wasn't any outside of Cuomo, New York. Nobody was crying about needing more respirators or anything else. So we seem to have flattened the curve at that point, and it should have been over. But for some reason, the powers that be decided we needed another 30 days. Otherwise, there were still going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, not millions maybe, but hundreds of thousands were going to perish. And then 2 more weeks went by, and then it became very clear that wasn't true either. And then it turned into, well, maybe only 60,000 are going to die. And then it just didn't start to make a lot of sense. And we found out about a week and a half ago that New York was actually faking their numbers. It actually was publicized widely. They were literally taking people that had COVID-like symptoms, and because of that, they were calling them COVID deaths. But there are a lot of reasons why older people, especially with obesity, severe underlying medical conditions, die. Kidney failure, heart failure. Sometimes the body just gives up and quits. The flu, we seem to have forgotten all about the seasonal flu that kills like 40 to 60,000 people a year. Somehow that just kind of disappeared. And so we know that New York was just calling anything that anybody died of heart attack, kidney failure, liver failure, pulmonary failure, blood clots, the regular seasonal flu, bronchitis, any of the other 50 reasons people die of failing organs. These were all being classified as COVID deaths. And if you look at the statistics are wildly obvious that New York was faking. New York has 4 times the amount of infection rate, 4 times the mortality rate. Now, I could believe that some people are more unhealthy in New York. It's obviously not a very healthy city. They don't live well, not a lot of exercise, a lot of smoking. There's a lot of smog in the air. Obviously, they're going to contribute to more lung issues. So it wouldn't surprise me if New York had a higher mortality rate, but double, triple the mortality rate. Clearly, something's up to no good. And they finally had to admit that they were just classifying people that were dying of anything as COVID deaths. And the reason why is very simple. Politics, right? Politics. We've been told not to politicize this. Every time you go on Facebook or anyplace else, you get chastised if you make a comment that is political. Oh, don't politicize this. This is life and death. But yet, New York's politicizing it. Michigan is clearly politicizing it. New Jersey, all these super liberal states have all had similar increased infection rates, increased mortality rates that don't coincide with what the rest of the country is seeing. And so there's funny business going on. So what I started doing was doing some serious research on it. I started taking a look at the numbers, looking at the data, and I found some very interesting things. Trust me, this is going to get back to your business soon, but let's go down this rabbit hole just for a bit, because obviously I know we're all interested in it regardless. So let's see where this goes and then how it's going to circle back to affect business and your livelihoods. So when I knew there was some funny business going on, I started doing some serious research on it. And there was actually a paper published by Fauci along with 2 other doctors. And I'm going to bring that up on the big screen. Hopefully you guys can follow on YouTube. You can see the big screen here. I'm going to bring that up on the big screen because it's definitely worth taking a look at. And then we're going to get into some other details. I just want to make sure where I have this at. There it is. Okay, let's get to Facebook. Now, I actually put this on my personal Facebook, not on my business one, but my personal one. because at the time I wanted to kind of, be a little more sensitive to some people. But after a while, I mean, it's just become so blatantly obvious that this is a hoax that I needed to go ahead and start to really talk about this more as such. And when I say a hoax, I don't mean a hoax from the aspect that the virus isn't real. It is real. It's just nowhere near as serious as they claimed, and they knew that going in. And let me prove to you how they knew that. The same experts that told us it was going to be millions die if we don't crash the economy and close our businesses and sacrifice our livelihoods, the same experts being Fauci and Barracks, they were the ones that told us millions would die. But interestingly enough, I uncovered a paper that Fauci had written about a week and a half before he announced millions would die. Now, this is something, I'm going to put a link on my YouTube channel in this. This is something we can all take a look at. Now, this was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Now it's marked or dated in March. It says it was published March 26th. That doesn't mean it's when he wrote the paper. I don't think he wrote the paper March 26th, but that's when it was published again in the New England Journal of Medicine. Now you see the top here. It says COVID-19 Navigating the Uncharted editorial, and it's authored by Anthony S. Fauci, MD, Clifford Lane, MD, and Robert Redfield, MD. And if you look up any of these other people, you'll see that they are prominent in the field of virology and infectious diseases. And they wrote this paper together. And this paper, I'm not going to go into everything, but one of the things that you will read here, it talks about what the veracity of the virus is going to be. It also talks about the seriousness of the mortality rate. So looking at it, and again, these are career experts at infectious diseases. This is what they do. This is what they study. Okay, so let's start on this page 1. Let's start about right here at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and just read it. On the basis of a case definition requiring a diagnosis of pneumonia, the currently reported case fatality rate is approximately 2%. Now, this is what we were led to believe. Okay, so you're saying, okay, Cory, you're wrong here because he's saying approximately 2%. But let's not stop there. In another article in the journal, a report of mortality was being shown of 1.4 among 1,999 patients with laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 cases. These patients had a wide spectrum of disease diversity. If one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. Let's look at that. If one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. Now, I'm going to suggest that they wrote this paper probably at either the end of February or the beginning of March. This is clearly before Anthony Fauci goes on national television standing next to the President of the United States talking about how millions could die. He'll have to answer as to when he wrote this, but clearly it was already after the outbreak was known. It was already after a lot of the information coming out of China was known. The WHO, who is now being properly investigated, all of this obviously was known to Fauci, and Fauci is plugged into all the resources you could possibly plug into. So to say that he didn't know what he was talking about or know this paper, obviously you'd have to say his entire career meant nothing. He knows nothing up until this point. Not true. It cannot be that he states what he states in this paper is accurate, and then what he states on TV a week and a half later is also true. They contradict each other. So my question becomes, is Anthony Fauci a liar or completely incompetent? Because what he says in this paper and what he says a week later are two different things. Now, we can know by doing some further research, nothing new about the contagiousness of the virus or the mortality rates of the virus was known from the time that he wrote this paper to the time he made that announcement. Nothing further was really known about the virus. And how do we know that? Because he says so when he talks about why we have to do a shutdown, why we have to do mitigation, strong mitigation. he talks about it. He says we don't know much about this virus, or at least that was his claim at this point. However, when he writes this paper, he seems to know all about it. So again, how does the man know all about it in this paper that he wrote before that? And then all of a sudden he has amnesia. Again, is he a liar or is he incompetent? It has to be one or the other. I'll let you make that determination, or maybe we'll let the record make that determination, because hopefully this is investigated thoroughly after this is all over. But it says here, this suggests that the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%, or a pandemic influenza similar to those in 1957 and 1968, rather than a disease similar to SARS or MERS, which have case fatality rates of 9 to 10% and 36% respectively. MERS, thank goodness, didn't have too many people have it. And so that never went anywhere. So we don't really know what the real mortality rates would have been had it been, over a few million people. I'm sure it would have dropped to probably something way less than that. But what we do know is he's literally saying in this paper, the man who is the preeminent expert in the world, we are told, on this subject matter, states here in a paper that's published in the New England Journal of Medicine, this suggests that the overall clinical consequence of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1. Now, 0.1 is pretty bad. 0.1 is 1 out of 100 people that get it are going to die, right? And that's pretty bad. It is. 1 out of 100. Those 99% is good on a paper you did in school, right? But I wouldn't want to roll the dice on those odds of dying over I get something. So even at 1%, you got to say, hey, you got to be kind of damn careful. Wash your hands. Maybe stay away from some people. Don't go, touching the gas nozzle at the gas station without washing your hands afterwards. I mean, some sensibility would occur if they say, hey, 1% of the people would die with this. Yes, it's going to be the 1% that they're older, they have underlying medical conditions, et cetera, et cetera. But we know that the regular flu kills a lot of children. This is proven to kill no children. We've heard reports of people dying from the complications, whatever that means. I read one article that talked about a child that died, they claimed, of COVID. You gotta be careful how you gotta watch how they word this stuff, of COVID complications. And here was the complications. If you read the actual article, the child didn't die of COVID. The child died of meningitis. The child went to the emergency room because of the symptoms of COVID and somehow contracted meningitis. Now, meningitis, if you research that, is a very well-known child disease, and it kills a lot of children every single year. It's a bad one. It kills a lot of children. We should be much more concerned with meningitis than coronavirus. But again, not mentioned by the media. Why? Because it doesn't fit a narrative that they can use to gain more control and more power, which is what I'm about to prove this was all about. So again, why does Fauci a week later claim that millions are going to die? I don't know. But let's look at some evidence. Some further evidence that I'm going to share with you on this point has to do with Gates and his involvement in the WHO. Now, we know that this really wasn't that big of a deal until the WHO announced that it was going to be a pandemic. Now, they had held off on calling it a pandemic for quite a while. The whole time it's going in China, they're not calling it a pandemic. And they're saying it's not that serious. Don't worry about it. China has it under control. It's not even that big of a deal. That's what the WHO, the World Health Organization, is telling us. Fauci's also telling us no big deal, no big deal. Well, in the interim of the no big deals and the papers written saying it's no worse than the flu, something happens. What happens? Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, and again, you can Google this one, Gates Foundation donates money to the WHO. It's all I got to put in. And the first thing that comes out, it talks about how the day before the WHO announces this as a worldwide pandemic, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation donated $50 million. Now, here's a report on CNN, good old CNN, right? It's accurate. Here you go. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is donating $100 million to coronavirus relief. Now it sounds all I can't even pronounce the word. It sounds all good. I'll skip the word because I can't pronounce it right now. Too much caffeine. But when we look at it, the dates of it, okay, this is when we're being told, stupid clickbait, we're being told at this point that it's no big deal. Oh, you can read it. They got stupid CNN has this banner. This was published February 6, 2020. Now, this is during the time when China says it's no big deal, the WHO says it's no big deal, and Fauci is saying it's no big deal. February 6, 2020. Okay, and we had done the ban on Chinese flights to the United States at this point, and people were being advised, obviously, that it could become serious, to take stronger precautions when going out, but in New York, they were still saying, hey, come for Chinese New Year, ride the subway, come on down. They're still wanting to party in New York while this is going on. And then quietly, or maybe not so quietly, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation donates $100 million to the WHO to, quote, help fight coronavirus. Now, if the Chinese are saying it's not that big of a deal, we got it under control. The WHO is saying it's under control. New York is throwing parties still. Why are they donating $100 million? That's not a little bit of money. $100 million. Now, oddly enough, again, sometime after this donation, the WHO, and again, we can look at that date. So this is February 6, 2020. Let's go to Google. When did the WHO report corona as a pandemic? We can take a look at that timeline, and you can see that they reported it after the first $50 million that Bill Gates had donated. Now, what's also interesting here is the fact that Anthony Fauci, the preeminent expert in the world on this stuff, also sits on the board of directors of, you guessed it, the Gates Foundation. Now, again, take what you will. It seems a little too coincidental that all these people are related. Money is passing back and forth. We're being told it's no big deal. Then it turns into being it's going to be the end of the world as we know it, unless we close down our businesses, give up our jobs, stop supporting our families, not pay our bills, et cetera, et cetera. We can type in Fauci, Board of Directors, Gates Foundation. Sure enough, there it is, right? Global health leaders launch decade of vaccines. Bill and Melinda Gates collaboration follows January 2010. Okay, and Fauci, director of NIAID, right, is now on the board as of January 2010 of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which their whole purpose is obviously, and their whole drive is to vaccinate the world. So that doesn't look suspicious until you lay out the timelines and the time frames and the flip-flopping of the story of Fauci. And then we also know now, obviously, that millions didn't die. This was nowhere near as contagious as they said, or maybe it was more contagious. Matter of fact, the contagion actually, end of it, I think, is proven to be way more contagious than the flu. More on par with like a normal cold virus, which obviously corona is a cold virus. So we can take a look at that. Now, there's a new study out, just released a couple of days ago, that I also want you to consider, released by USC, University of Southern California, has done a study. And what they've done is they started antibody testing. Now, everybody has wanted the antibody testing. Everybody said, if we need antibody tests, we need to know who's had it. We need to know who's immune, et cetera, et cetera. So USC says, okay, great, not a problem. We'll get on this right away. So USC, University of Southern California, starts doing this antibody testing, right? Now, they start doing randomized testing, this article, and you can just Google this and find it too. I'll put some links on the YouTube channel all the way down on all this stuff so you guys can look at it. But now they're doing this antibody testing. Everybody was calling for, all of these politicians were calling for, the CDC was calling for, and now here come the results, right? And now the results are very interesting because what they're starting to find is they're finding that this randomized testing of antibodies shows that approximately 4% of the entire county's adult population has an antibodies to the virus. Okay. Adjusting the estimate for the statistical margin of error implies anywhere between 3% to almost 6% of the county's adult population. So get this, has antibody to the virus, which translates to approximately 221,000 people on the low end to 442,000 people on the high end. Now, if we just pick the mean or the median number here, well, let's call it, 350,000. And we know that confirmed cases, they're only at about 8,000, when really they now have evidence to show really it's about 350,000. So now we just do some basic math and we say, okay, how many times does 8,000 divide into 350,000? Let's do some basic easy math here. That comes out to 23. So it comes out to 23 times. 23 times is what it is. And that's what they go on to say here with regards to the math. It's anywhere, actually I take it back. It's anywhere, I think I did that wrong. It's actually anywhere from 28, it says down here, 28 to 58 times higher than the 3,000. Again, if we take the median, we can say the difference between 28 and 50 is like, we'll call it 40. So 40 times higher. Again, if we take that math and we say 40 times higher, then again, we come out to the 400,000, 350,000 range. Now, if we apply the mortality rates to that, which again, I'll put a link, but this is easy to find, coronavirus stats. There's a really cool website, if you're interested in this, that tracks all of these stats worldwide. It's called the worldmeters.info. Okay, so let's go to that website and take a look. And we can see, okay, reported cases, 2.6 million, deaths, 184,000, active cases, 1.7 million, 97% in mild conditions, only 3% in critical condition. Now let's look at, so we can take, and we can find out, we can calculate now the mortality rate easy, right? Because we now know from the USC study that we're talking about 40 times. And I'm thinking even higher, but we'll just go with 40 times. So 40 times 2,6,3,7,4,1,4 equals, my calculator's put commas in, but we come up with 105 million people worldwide by USC's calculations have the coronavirus. 105 million, okay? So now if we look at the deaths of 184,000, we would divide 184,000 to 04 divided by, let me see if I can make sure this actually, I get enough zeros in here, right? 105 million, there is, what's my zeros? There's this was just 1 million, 10 million, right? 10 million. So one more, we need one more. So there it is, 105 million equals a mortality rate of 0.00175%. So we are at 1 in 1,000, maybe 1.5, we'll call it 1.7 in 1,000 is the true mortality rate. Now, we were told in Fauci's paper that this would mirror the flu, which has a mortality rate of 1%. Right here it is in his paper that he wrote of 0.1%. We now know with our own examination of the facts that we actually have a mortality rate of 0.001%. We'll round it up. We'll call it 0.002, benefit of the doubt. So how less deadly is the coronavirus over an aggressive flu? Clearly, 1 out of 100 versus 2 out of 1,000, so 1 out of 500. So literally, it's 5 times less deadly than the regular flu. Now, I do not remember 1957 or 1968. I wasn't born yet. I don't know if they did lockdowns like this. I don't think they did. We certainly didn't do it for SARS or MERS or H1N1, which actually had a much more higher mortality rate than 0.002. We didn't do it for any of that. So we have the preeminent expert in the world telling us it's worst case scenario, 0.1. Have him on TV saying nothing to worry about. We now know, and I've long suspected this, that we have an actual mortality rate of 0.002%. Why in the world did they shut us down? Now, I promised you coming back to business. Let's come back to business. Who was affected by this? The politicians? No. Their paychecks continue to roll. Matter of fact, they're getting bigger. They're getting more donations if they say the right things. Did Fauci's paycheck stop? No. He still gets his $400,000 a year paycheck. Look that up. You'll be shocked, right? So the guy that's getting his $400,000 a year guaranteed paycheck, and how many millions is he going to get kicked back by Gates? Okay, he can make money on the side. There's nothing against that. How much money does he make on the side? Does his son sit on the board of directors of any other Gates-controlled companies making millions of dollars? Seems to be the pattern with these people, doesn't it? So who got hurt here? Small businesses. Small businesses got hurt. That's it. And people who got laid off from small businesses. So small businesses, small business owners, and people who got laid off from small businesses, that's who's getting hurt. So you have the experts that are supposedly telling us we have to shelter in our houses. We can't come outside. Don't go to work. Make sure that you don't spread the virus. When we have a virus that has a provability on a mortality rate of 0.002%, which is a fifth as deadly as a normal flu, and we have the experts in the world telling us lies. Now, Fauci and Birx and the CDC and every other virologist and epidemiologist that has gotten on TV and claimed that we needed to do this are either absolute liars, completely incompetent, or they have an agenda. Okay. Now, I'm going to go with 1 and 3. I don't believe they're incompetent. Nobody is this incompetent. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Look how easy I figured this out. Okay. These people were oblivious to this apparently. Now, I was putting posts on my Facebook page a month and a half ago about this being a hoax. For the very reason that I started doing some research about it and I started looking at the numbers and I said, there's no way this is going to be the virus they're saying it is. There's no way. Now, I knew it. Fauci didn't know it, or did he know it? His paper seems to prove he knew it. So what happens? Bill Gates. A media thirsty for a news cycle. Have any of us seen the media talk about anything else besides this virus for the last month and a half? Have you seen one other news story anywhere, any newspaper, any place on social media, any place on news channels? Has there been one story of any kind besides coronavirus? Not a one. Do you know what the ratings are for these news channels? You know what the rating is for Facebook? You know how much how many more minutes a day people are spending on Facebook and Instagram during this period? You know how much more screen time Facebook is getting off of this? So the media cannot be trusted at all because they have skin in the game. The longer this goes on, the bigger deal it is, the greater the news cycle, the more of a calamity, the more of a disaster it is, the more people are going to tune in, which means the higher the ratings, the pundits are getting paid, the opinion hosts and the quote news hosts are getting paid. They're getting paid extra bonuses because their ratings are through the roof. People are paying more to be to having commercials on the channels. Businesses that are making out like Amazon, the Angel Soft toilet paper company, they're paying for extra time on TV on these news channels. And they're paying like it's Super Bowl commercials. So everybody that's giving us advice here either has an insidious agenda that's tied to Bill Gates, or they're getting larger paychecks from this going on. That's who we're getting our information from. And we're surprised that the information is tainted. We're surprised that it's biased. We're surprised that the media is telling us something that's not true. They're getting paid. We're surprised that the liberal media, the liberal politicians who want nothing more than to destroy the economy. That is their dream. They've been hoping for it, praying for it. Right? You have that idiot HBO host, I can't remember his name right now, that's been calling for a recession for years so they can get rid of Trump. Because the one thing that Trump can always run on was the economy. So what does all the left politicians, all the Democratic politicians want? They want to destroy Trump. They've been after him forever. And I don't care what you think about Trump, good or bad. I like some things he does, and I think he's an idiot on some other things. But it doesn't mean that I'm out to destroy the guy, but they've been out to destroy him. That's been obvious. They've made up the wildest lies and had wildest investigations with not a shred of evidence. We watched it all play out. Zero evidence. They'll make up whatever. They'll lie. They'll cheat. They'll coerce. They'll prosecute 5-star generals that have dedicated their lives to this country. They'll prosecute them for not remembering something just to try to get some dirt on Trump. That's who we're dealing with now. You expect them to tell the truth at a time like this when they're getting exactly what they want? So the politicians are lying. The media is lying. Fauci is tied to Gates. Gates is paying the WHO. The WHO is corrupt. We already know that. China pays them off regularly to say whatever. And Gates wants to vaccinate the world and control the vaccine on coronavirus. What have you heard since this all started? We need a vaccine. We need a vaccine. We need a vaccine. We need a vaccine. How many times have we heard that? We need a vaccine. Who do you think's worked on the vaccine? Gates. Who's gonna stand a profit? Gates. Who's corrupt? The WHO. Who's corrupt? Liberal media. Who's corrupt? Liberal politicians that want to destroy Trump. Now, I'm hugely disappointed in how Trump has handled this. I think it's a shame the way he handled it. Now, I think originally he tried to kick back. I think he tried to call it a hoax. I know a couple of his original news conferences, he was, saying, I think this is more overblown, but we're going to be safe than sorry. And I'm going to, stop flights from China. And I think he did that originally because it was just smart to do it, just to make sure that, hey, we don't really need all these Chinese people here right now. We can hold off for 30 days and see where this really goes. But I think he got sold a bill of goods by Fauci and Barracks, and I don't think he knew that they were on Gates's payroll. I don't think he knew they were dreaming and hoping for this. These people whose job it is to oversee infectious diseases and infectious disease control, they lay in bed at night hoping there's a pandemic. Of course they do. That's like saying a mechanic hopes that nobody's car breaks down. Bullshit. They wanted a pandemic. They dream about it. It's what they got their degrees in, and all their accreditation and their whole careers have been dedicated to it. They relish when there's pandemics. They dream about it every night. That's who is giving us our advice. And I'm hugely disappointed in the American public. I'm hugely disappointed that the wool could be pulled over a lot of people's eyes so easily that we would just march into our homes when told to do so by the government. Now, if we look at the Constitution and the constitutionality of these actions, do the governors have the power to order us to our homes? No, they do not. Not even in a state of an emergency. Now, they can declare a state of an emergency. They can put in certain guidelines and close down certain roads, and they can, keep us off of certain areas and beaches. They cannot order you to your homes. They can certainly not order you out of your businesses. This whole thing has been done 100% against the Constitution. Finally, there's lawyers that are starting to sue these governments. over the rights that have been violated. And I guarantee you the courts are going to uphold the fact that the governors had no authority to do what they've done. The government had no authority to order us all home for a month and a half. There's no authority for that whatsoever. And then when we look at the facts and we look at the evidence, we look at the actual reports that are coming out concerning the actual mortality rates and the infection rates. And now we start to know this was 100% absolutely a hoax. 100% a hoax. It was a strong cold virus, nothing more. Fauci knew it. He knew it when he wrote this paper. I don't buy that he found out some mystery evidence 2 weeks later or a week later, whenever it was, this paper was written to when he announced millions would die. I don't believe he found some miracle evidence, because where is the miracle evidence? All the evidence that's come out after that shows that he even over-exaggerated it at 1%. He even overstated it as being as mortal as the regular flu. So he erred on the side of caution in this paper, which is probably, you'd say is a smart thing, overestimate a little just in case, but don't say that it's 4 or 5 times that and everybody better panic and run to their home with clutching their toilet paper, which is what he did. I want Fauci investigated. I want him looked into. I want Birx looked into. I want their connections to the Gates Foundation looked into. I want the WHO investigated. I want the payments from Gates to the WHO and the timing and the communications between them investigated. I want to see the emails and the texts and the phone calls between Birx, Fauci, Gates, the WHO. I want to see this. We all need to see it. We deserve it. What these people did to us is inexcusable. They have destroyed lives. Millions of businesses will not be able to make it. I don't give a shit how much stimulus they provide. It isn't going to be in time. It isn't happening fast enough. And it's not going to save people's jobs. It's not going to save businesses. We are in for a hell of a ride the next year. I believe in the next year we will make a strong comeback. There's no doubt about it. The fundamentals are strong. But all the businesses that were just barely getting by are going to be completely crushed out, of course. And all the people that were on the fringe of, maybe having their employment questioned, obviously are now going to be unemployed. And it's millions of people. And it's a lot of businesses. And the ones that are strong enough to make it and the ones that are strong enough to weather a storm like this are still going to be hurt, are still going to have severe financial ramifications and lose a lot of money. The consequences of a hoax like this, regardless of how much money is put into the economy, regardless of how much stimulus they give, cannot be undone. The damage is real. Anthony Fauci it needs to be held responsible for what he did here. Birx needs to be responsible. I want to know where Clifford Lane and Dr. Redfield have been. These gentlemen signed off on this paper published. Where are these guys? Anybody seen them interviewed? Has anybody seen a Robert Redfield interview? Has anybody seen a Clifford Lane interview? These gentlemen, these doctors put their name on this paper before they called this deadly virus pandemic, claiming it was going to be no worse than the flu. Where are these guys? And I'm also pissed at the media. I want the media investigated. Where is the investigative reporting? Now, I don't care what goes on in this world. If anything looks like it may or may not have some validity or maybe it's questionable, there's investigative reporting all over the place looking into it. Where has the investigative reporting been? Can you show me on any major news channel, any major news network, show me one investigative reporter that has actually looked into this? The only one I can even cite has been Tucker Carlson. He has, as of late, the last week or so, started to question whether or not we made good decisions. Laura Ingraham on the Ingraham angle has done the same. They have started to question some of the reasoning behind why we did what we did, but not from an investigative standpoint, just from an opinion piece. So it doesn't have that much weight. I want to see real journalism. I want to see real investigations into these things, and it's not being done. Have any of you at the time of this going out even heard of this USC? research that just came out 2 days ago? Have you seen this on any major news channel? Here's the proof in the pudding. USC, an accredited university, major university, did this study. It came out with conclusive evidence days ago. Have you heard of this on the mainstream media? Have they said it? No, they have not, because they are liars and charlatans, and they've done this to us. I hope we wake up. I hope we wake up, and I hope we take control back. I hope that the investigations go deep on this stuff. I hope we get control back of what's gone on. I hope that the people that were part of spreading these lies and this hoax and perpetuating this hoax, I hope they're brought to justice. I hope that Fauci is indicted. I hope that if it's found that he was paid or asked to change his opinion of the mortality rate of this virus from the time he writes this paper to his advice to the president, if it's found that that was tainted in any way whatsoever, I want him prosecuted. And if not, Anthony Fauci, where is the evidence that you discovered from the time you wrote this paper to the time you made that announcement? Show us the evidence you have. Show us what you looked at that changed your opinion. Let's see it. You have yet to show it to us, Dr. Fauci, you career bureaucrat. $400,000 a year salary that is still getting paid no matter what happens. I want you investigated. And if enough of us get behind it and get behind our congressmen and senators and push them to do so, it will happen. People need to be held accountable for what they did here. Now, May 1st is going to come. Governors are starting to open up. Governor Kemp of Georgia opened up. Ron DeSantis is opening up in Florida. We now have the governor of Oklahoma announcing today that he's going to start opening up businesses come this Friday. So they're a little ahead, which is great. I think the vast majority of states that don't have a lot of virus, or at least a lot of death, they have a lot of virus, right? Because we proved it was 40 times whatever they're reporting. We know that for sure. So they have a lot of virus, don't have a lot of deaths. Some states have less than they have just double digits. Some have single digits still. What a farce. What a crock. They're going to open up and get businesses back to doing business and people back to working, and hopefully we'll see what the damage really is. I think it's going to be a lot more substantial than people think it is. I will say this, if you have a paycheck that's still rolled to you through this process, shut the hell up. Unless you're on the side of what's right here and on the side of the truth and the evidence of what all this shows and the hoax this shows it was, unless you are on that side and you're on the other side and your paycheck is continuing to roll, shut up. You don't have a voice. You weren't affected. You had a vacation. You had a staycation at your house. I don't want to hear your opinion. If your paycheck continued to roll and you have the opinion that everybody should just stay home and let their businesses collapse and not even worry about it because you're drinking a Mai Tai by your pool as your government paycheck continues to roll in, okay? I don't want to hear you. Shut up. Go about your business. You're one of the lucky ones. Real people got hurt here. It wasn't you, so shut up. Do your part. Go patronize these businesses once they reopen. Spend your money that you received. I'm not going to say you earned, you received during the shutdown, and you take it to those businesses that are affected. The real victims here. That's what you do. Other than that, you have no opinion. Other than you need to change it right here, right now. We need to start getting the truth out, because even though we're going to start opening up as of May 1st, a lot of states aren't. You have these liberal states that are going to try to fight it. The governor of Michigan, that whack job, she's obviously announcing that she's going to fight it. They want to shut down through summer. Cuomo wants to keep it shut down all the way through summer, even though it's been proven that his death rates are fake. He wants to shut down through summer. The governor of New Jersey wants to shut down through summer. I mean, these people are whack jobs. They're wackos. They want to destroy people. They don't care as long as they can get Trump, as long as they can win the election November 4th, as long as they can get this senile guy that can't even put two sentences together anymore, Biden, elected. They don't care who they destroy. We have to stop these people. This needs to be your wake-up call to how this all works. Stop trusting the media. Stop trusting nonsense you see on social media. Stop trusting politicians. We know they lie. All of them. There's some good ones. I'm not going to say they're all bad. There's been some strong people that have come out in opposition of this shutdown, looking out for small businesses, and their paycheck is continuing to roll. So if your paycheck is continuing to roll and you were opposed to all this, then I salute you. You are a true American. You're a patriot. And thank you for trying to at least have some decency with regards to the real victims here. Now, again, did people die of this? Yes, they did, but they were probably going to die of the next thing they caught. Again, it's unfortunate. Again, I'm not trying to discount that human life isn't valuable. It absolutely is. But let's face it, a lot of these people that did pass away from COVID-19 infections were going to die of the next thing they caught, whether it was a cold, the flu, their kidneys finally failing, the obesity they have, the complications from the other medical conditions they had. I mean, but young, healthy adults did not perish from this. And even if we look at taking into consideration all of the people with underlying health conditions that have perished from this, we still end up with a 0.002%. 1/5 of the normal flu. Okay. Now, if we take healthy populations and children, which thank God weren't affected at all, which the flu does affect, then the numbers are even better. Again, there's infectious diseases. There is. People die of them all the time. We need to remind ourselves that people die. People die of all kinds of things. Most of it, the big ones, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, most of that is self-inflicted. Then we have murder, we have suicide, drug overdose. Murder is not self-inflicted, but it's man-made. Drug overdose is self-inflicted. Suicide is self-inflicted. We have real problems, real serious situations we never deal with. We sweep under the rug, and something like this comes along in the media and the crooked-ass politicians and Bill Gates and his cronies and crooked-ass Fauci and crooked-ass Birx. They take advantage of it, and they use our fears against us and the gullibility of a lot of Americans, and they drive you to your homes, violating your constitutional rights. They take away your businesses, take away your jobs, promise you bullshit help in the form of stimulus. How many of you have gotten your $1,200 check? I bet not many listening to this. And the PPP was a joke. The PPP that started out to help businesses, with all big businesses. It's all big business. Which I'm not against. I mean, they need to keep their payrolls too. It's just they knew how much money they needed. They lied again about how much money they needed. Now, thankfully, there's another $360 billion going to roll out to the PPP. If you haven't got it, do so. I'm going to put another link to meet Kevin in the description, so you guys can go get your second round PPP. If you haven't applied yet, go apply. Definitely get it if you can. I'm not going to apply for it. I don't need it. I'm fine weathering the storm. So I'm not going to take somebody else's. Now, if you don't need it, if you don't need the PPP, even though you could get it, don't take it, because that means that somebody else who does need it won't get it. So don't take it if you don't need it. If you need it, take it. Have no guilt about it. But if you don't need it, don't take it. That means that somebody else who needs it won't get it. Don't do that. It's unethical. So look, there's a lot to digest here. I want you guys to go research this. As you can tell, I'm pretty emotional about it. I'm pretty pissed off we did this. It's going to hurt a lot of small businesses. The good news is we're going to be back open here in another week, week and a half, the vast majority of the country. After this podcast, my next podcast, we're going to start going into damage control. As you reopen up, we're going to start talking about the moves you should be making, how you can reopen up. We've talked about that in another podcast before this one. We've talked about how to get your sales funnels proper, how to get your marketing funnels proper. Next podcast, next YouTube show, I'm going to go into more marketing so that you can, again, get going faster as you open up, get your businesses rebuilt faster. Get the money flowing again quicker and easier. I'll show you exactly how to do that. And it is not by doing discounts. I don't want you to do discounts, at least not ultimate discounts. We can do teaser discounts. We can do value adds. I'll talk about that in the next episode. We'll show you how to open up quicker, faster, better. And ultimately, for those that were strong and weathered this storm, you're going to be better off ultimately long term because, again, we've been learning, right? We've been learning lessons. We've been learning new techniques, new strategies. And we're going to start deploying those and have the ability to deploy those in our businesses here very, very shortly, which, again, will make us come out the other side of this stronger, not weaker. And those of you that are going to lose your businesses, lose your jobs, again, maybe do some self-assessment. If your business wasn't strong enough to go a month and a half without revenue, maybe you had deeper underlying issues than you believed. And you really take a look at the strength of your business and your business model and whether or not you even should have been in business. If you're laid off, fired after this, maybe reassess your skill set. Obviously, your employer, if they don't call you back, did not necessarily think that highly of your skills and what you brought to the table. There's some self-analysis that needs to be done there so you can improve those skills and come back stronger on your next job and be more indisposable. So if something happens again, you're going to be either not furloughed, not let go, or the first to be called back. That's what you wanted in this situation. Thank you for joining me for another episode. I really appreciate the love and support. Again, if you got some value out of this, please like, share, subscribe, pass it around. The more people that we can get in on this, the better. We're going to help people. Again, have a great week. Let's build, let's get smarter, and I'll see you guys next week on the next one.